Alright everybody, welcome back to We Play Games. I'm Walker, and here we are resuming our Humankind tutorial, about to jump into the early modern era. This is going to be like meta conversations about the game more than it is a let's play, but I figure the easiest way for us to have a meta conversation about the game is of course to talk over a game as we play it. But here we are about to move into the early modern era, and because of the way the game works, once you start getting past the medieval period, assuming you aren't doing just like a world conquest during the earlier time periods because you're on a very small map or everybody's on the same continent, you're going to have to start figuring out what your win condition is. In Humankind, there are a couple of different ways to end the game. The victor ultimately goes to the person who has the most fame, even if the culture in question is eliminated, which is why we're trying to eliminate the Nubians so quickly, because we don't want these guys just doing infinite fame stacking and leaving everybody in the dust. That's important to keep in mind when it comes to the game. Like, ultimately, I think that your trade partners should be the AI that are not going to do particularly well on fame, or at least aren't going to push really hard on fame. And then of course the AI that are really weak, try to take them out. We've eliminated blue here, and we're trying to eliminate brown just so that way they can't threaten our victory with their infinite fame stacking through their stubborn bias. But if you're trying to end the game, there are a couple of critical ways to do it. You can end the game by getting all of the era stars in the contemporary era. That means that you need to be kind of well specialized while also being diverse, because you're going to need a lot of different things in order to make sure that you hit all of these stars and all of the requirements for those stars in the contemporary era. You can also end the game by just finishing the technology tree. I think the finishing the technology tree is generally a little harder than just getting all the contemporary stars, simply because it is pretty expensive in terms of research. And if you're getting that much research, why aren't you just conquering people and getting era stars? But you can end the game through sending a mission to Mars, through vassalizing all of the other empires, or through eliminating all of the other empires. Now, which direction you go in, whether it's the contemporary stars or the other ones, kind of does depend on the setup for the map. The larger the map and the more players there are, generally speaking, the more difficult it's going to be for you to eliminate all of the players, just because, the units here aren't teleporting just yet. We don't have the technology for airports. And so that means that you kind of need to keep in mind where the strengths and weaknesses of your culture are, because the civilization is going to require maxing out all of these stars if you're trying to do the contemporary era rush. And that means that if you notice, moving out of the medieval and into the early modern, that there's a particular weakness, this is a great opportunity for you to start shoring up that weakness. You should be strong enough militarily that you should be able to beat basically any of the AI at this point, but understanding where this era problem is going to be is a fixable problem, and one that can pay off really well. So in this case, I think we're actually going to move into the Venetians, but this is contextual. Just like pay attention to where your holes are on your culture map as you move into the early modern era. Pick things that'll help you there. It's not going to score as much fame, obviously, because if you're hyper specialized, it's going to be a lot easier to push through money here as merchant. But Venetians are great in this case, coming out of a militarist star character like the Aztecs, because it's going to give us a ton of extra money. And that money, of course, we can funnel back into upgrading our units. So you see, we can upgrade the Samanya, although we'd be upgrading them into crossbowmen, but we can upgrade these horsemen into knights, we can upgrade this chariot into a knight, and all of this stuff is going to cost a lot of gold. We have a reasonable chunk of gold here, but the more gold that you have, the easier it's going to be for you to upgrade things, and the easier it's going to be for you to get good value out of the troops that you already have on the board. And that's just generally, once you have enough troops, I think the easiest way to stay strong is just upgrade things as much as possible, rather than spending money on rushing things through. And of course, the Venetians, because they have the ability to funnel influence and then get money, kind of serve as the opposite of a state, and a way for us to take advantage of all of this influence that's just kind of sitting around, because there's no way for us to colonize on this board, and turn it into money. So we're going to go ahead and grab Venetians here, but I think the real strength of the Venetians isn't going to be just the fact that they are, of course, a money culture, but the fact that we can trade with AI. So in this case, I've noticed through our friends in the Mississippians, the Carolans, that there's an entirely new continent out here, and that means a lot of new trade routes that we can set up. All of those trade routes, of course, as the Venetians, are going to just pay out really, really, really well, especially because we're going to be doing naval transportation. And of course, by getting all of these extra resources, it's going to dramatically increase our available money as we build out our trade network. We're just going to get more and more cash with every single trade that we set up. So the power investor action for being in a merchant culture allows you to spend just a little bit of influence to get a lot of money. At the beginning of the game, obviously you're not going to be doing this. Like 100 influence for any amount of money is almost never worth it at the beginning of the game. But as I mentioned, influence is going to drop off as you play, and money is going to become more and more and more important. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and activate the ability to just get a whole bunch of extra cash out of this orange player here, because just looking at where the fame is, you can identify who's the least threatening of your competition, and those are generally where you want to send all your extra money. You don't want to be buying a whole lot of stuff and doing a lot of trade with potential threats down the road, but doing some trade with people who are not particularly threatening and not capable of challenging your dominance, that's usually the way to go. Now, I do want to note that sometimes an upgrade is actually like a misnomer. So here, the Samanya, one of the things that makes them just so outrageously powerful is that they actually ignore penalties from fighting in melee. Whereas if we were to upgrade to crossbowmen, they would have the same strength. You see 31 strength versus 31 strength. Whereas if we upgrade to the crossbowmen, we lose the ability to use elephant platform. So not every upgrade is good. It just is contextual based off of, the unit in particular. And in this case, because the Samanya are just like so ridiculous, they're actually better than the things that they upgrade into. You don't have to spend the money there. So you can see here that the Nubians are kind of doing a mad dash to try to fill in as many of these empty spaces as possible. That makes sense from their perspective because every unattached outpost is just very, very easy to take during the war resolution phase. But of course, the more cities that they plop down here, the easier it'll be for us to get good value out of our maximum city cap, because we definitely could run 2 over city cap at this point. But I think the situation that we have on the ground demands that we pick up some new technologies. Generally speaking, whenever you see like 3-masted ship, this is a great way for you to get good value out of founding new cities in the later part of the game. It's a really, really important technology. It allows you to found some cities with lots and lots of good infrastructure, and generally speaking, the later you get into the game, the harder it's going to be for you to keep up on infrastructure. So if you have to found cities, in the early modern or plus, make sure that you have good technology here. Outside of 3-masted ship, there are a couple of really, really, really nice things here inside of the early modern period, especially humanism. Humanism is going to give you access to the luxury manufactory, which is like the luxury booster on each of the resources. If you can get those luxury boosters, then basically your stability problems are going to be a thing of the past. It's going to be pretty impossible to have stability problems with a lot of luxury boosts going on. And that's one of the many advantages to making rapid progress, is that you should be able to get to the high level technologies and therefore humanism ASAP. So again, we do not have enough fame for us to vassalize the Nubians, but given that they are getting attacked on both sides by multiple AI as well as ourselves, it should be pretty clear that the best way for us to get rid of the Nubians as a threat in regards to the fame is to just wipe them out. So we are going to need to be on the warpath, but given that we should be able to get grievances through our civics and through just being near them and being hostile towards them, we should be able to get enough grievances to declare war again. But that is very, very, very important. You do not want to give up on just putting pressure onto these AI. They're very dangerous, and the more that you can threaten them, if they're ahead on fame but behind on everything else, you just should just eliminate competition wherever possible. So you can actually see here that we've actually hit all of the requirements in order to make it to the industrial era as the Venetians in just 5 turns. Part of that, of course, is that we had a longer medieval period, and anytime you have a longer era, it should be easier for you to make progress in the next era, because you should have lots and lots of resources coming into it. But I'm going to encourage you, if you care about fame, which you probably should by the end of the game, you probably want to take a little bit of time to score some extra stars, but by getting ahead of the AI in terms of eras, we have both the flexibility to score fame by delaying our ascension to the next era here, the industrial era, while also having the flexibility and power of choice. Because we are the only person here in the early modern who can actually move on to the industrial era, we have access to literally every single culture, which means we can choose whatever we need to in order to shore up our weaknesses in terms of our culture, and therefore be able to get through all of the era stars in the contemporary era a little easier, while also just having the time and flexibility to secure fame as we need to. So we've finally researched humanism, so this means that now, like, kind of all bets are off. We can go crazy in regards to building huge cities. Now, we are going to need a ton of industry, but I think that's going to be what our industrial era culture is going to fix for us. But every single one of these manufactories that we build is going to do a lot of things for us. So first, we're going to get a whole lot of extra stability. We're second going to get a lot of extra fame. And third, we're going to get the wondrous effect here. So you can see ambergris gets us 15% extra science. You can see that incense gets us extra money. See, lead gets us extra science. So every single one of these boosts that you can drop down, not only does it give you like a gigantic boost in regards to your stability, it also just gives you enormous amounts of resources overall because of the percentage-based bonuses. And obviously percentage-based bonuses at the beginning of the game are a little less impactful than later on, but now we are in that later on realm. We are at the point, in fact, where I'm pretty happy just going ahead and dropping our big manufactories in and using this enormous amount of money, buying out as many of these as possible. This is going to allow us to rapidly make progress on the Builder Star, which, of course, you want to get as much fame now as you can. But also, critically, this is just going to be an enormous boost to the overall production in our economy. Every single one of these is going to secure a lot of stability for our cities long term, while also just giving us a really nice big percentage-based bonus on most of our cities in terms of basically all resources imaginable. And of course, this is, I think, humanism probably the number one reason to take a scientific star culture during the medieval era, is that it allows you to research through to humanism super duper early, which is really powerful. But of course, in order to make good value of humanism, you do need tons and tons of resources, so you kind of can't do it without preparing yourself for doing it. You need a lot of resources and a lot of land, so just be aware of that. Alright, so I think we've delayed our progress into the industrial era long enough, because we have managed to at least pick up one of our critical affinity stars here, and with 12 out of 21, and our current position is well ahead of most of the competition, except of course for our long-term trade partner. Sometimes this is something that happens here in Humankind, like the more that you trade and interact with one of the other powers, the easier it's going to be for them to catch up, because they're conducting an awful lot of trade with you, and of course you're paying for it along the way. So it's not like the trade that you conduct with the AI is free and without consequence, but as long as we can keep ahead of Teal and annex the rest of the Nubian territory and continue to grow, hopefully by picking up these islands out here and maybe even attacking Green, because you can see here that Green, they're not particularly powerful, and they do of course have a vassal, which means that this is another opportunity for us to do some real expansion in the industrial era. But here I think we're done with the early modern era. That it's really contextual, and you just want to make sure that no matter what you're trying to do in terms of your victory condition, that you set yourself up for it. And in this case, we're trying to set ourselves up to just complete all of the era stars during the contemporary era. I do suspect that's probably going to be our best win condition here, and so I'm just trying to diversify our resources just a little bit. But we'll talk through what sort of cultures we're looking for in the industrial era in our next episode here on Humankind Tutorials on We Play Games. Alright, that's Walker. Take care.